What's good, Apex Madden League? It's your boy Big Al, aka Ferreira Sr., and I'm here with the 5th episode of the Franchise Podcast, only for the Apex Madden League on the Xbox One. And we're currently in Season 2. We're right around Week 8, I believe we're getting into. Just finished up Week 7. We might still have some of those games remaining. I'm not sure. I think we're at Week 8 right now, which is kind of like the halfway point for most of us in a season. So we're starting to get some of the draft picture available, stuff like that. But happy to be back in the studio for another podcast, episode 5 here. We're going to go back to what we do best, and that's talk about the team stats, the player stats, and the rookie stats. Also talk about the Apex League standings currently as we sit right now, and also the Apex Power Rankings, and then we'll go ahead and finish it up with the outro. So without further ado, we're going to get right into this episode with the team stat leaders up next. All right, Apex Madden League, first up, we're going to talk about the team stat leaders and as they sit right now here in the Apex Madden League. And we'll start off with the offensive side of the ball. Up first is the total offensive yards per game as a team, and that goes to the Washington Redskins at 393.7. Behind them is the Tennessee Titans at 388.2, the Arizona Cardinals at 369.3, and then the Buffalo Bills sit fourth with an even 360 yards per game on offense. And then finishing the top 5 in this category is the Los Angeles Rams at 355 even as well. Moving the ball through the air, who is the best team right now with just the slightest of margin is the Tennessee Titans at 284.7. Behind them is the Buffalo Bills at 284 even, and then you have the Jacksonville Jaguars at 271.3, and then the Detroit Lions in fourth at 270.3. So close, tight race. Finishing up the top 5 is the Los Angeles Chargers at 268.7. So that takes care of the teams for passing the ball. Who's running the ball on the ground? The most yards per game goes to the Washington Redskins with 159.4. Behind them is the Arizona Cardinals at 157.3. The San Francisco 49ers at 132.2. Despite having their number 1 and number 2 running back out for most of the beginning of this season, they're still in the 3rd spot. The Chicago Bears at 122.4 and the Minnesota Vikings at 117.5. One interesting thing that I noticed here on this stat for the rushing side is that I do not see any AFC teams. Are you guys running the ball over there, or is it just like pass happy? Because it looks pretty pass happy according to the stats. Moving the ball over to the defensive side, yards per game. Who's giving up the least amount of yards per game right now? And that's the Washington Redskins at 223.6, Cleveland Browns at 270.3, the Green Bay Packers at 271.1, the Los Angeles Chargers at 276, and they're tied with the New Orleans Saints also at 276. Shout out to my man J-Ho, who's doing the job down in New Orleans. Giving up the least amount of passing yards in the air is leading stats is Washington Redskins at 147.9, the San Francisco 49ers at 157.7, the New Orleans Saints at 178.1, and the Green Bay Packers at 186.1. And then you have a slight lead there over the Browns, who are at 186.6. Who's stopping the offense from running the ball on the ground the most in the Apex Madden League? That is the Oakland Raiders at 43.9. Then you have the Denver Broncos at 56.1, the Detroit Lions at 74 even, and then you have the Philadelphia Eagles sitting in the 4th spot at 74.7, and then finishing up the top 5 is the Washington Redskins at 75.7. The only stat that the Washington Redskins are not in as a team is passing the ball currently right now. And I would bet that they're probably within the top 10 on that list in passing. Next up, we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about who's getting it done in the Apex Madden League, what guys are leading the league in their category. That's up next. All right, Apex Madden League. Next, we're going to talk about the players getting it done in their respective categories. And as always, we'll start with the offensive side of the ball. And who is passing the ball the most in the Apex Madden League right now? That's Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills with 2,195 yards. He's surpassed the 2,000-yard mark so far. He's the only quarterback right now in the Apex Madden League to do that. Then you have Rich Watt from the Los Angeles Chargers, 1,937 yards in the air. Don't tell me this is another one of those Watt brothers. I mean, these guys are all over the place, and they already have one in Los Angeles, if we're not mistaken, with the Chargers. Drew Brees of the Indianapolis Colts. That just sounds weird. Drew Brees of the Indianapolis Colts is third on the list with 1,918 yards. Then you have Deshaun Watson of the Houston Texans with 1,857 yards in the air. Finishing the top five is Jared Goff of the Los Angeles Rams with 1,828 yards. Rushing the ball on the ground, Darius Geis of the Washington Redskins with 756 yards on the ground. Behind him is Josh Jacobs of the Oakland Raiders with 598. That is a huge gap in yardage on the ground right there. In third is Phillip Lindsay of Denver with 579, and then Tevin Coleman, who's currently hurt with the Niners, he's at 573, and then Justice Hill of the Baltimore Ravens at 556. Receiving yards, who's catching the most passes and running the ball and getting the most yards? Isaiah McKenzie of Buffalo with 747 yards. Makes sense when you have Josh Allen leading the league with 2,000 plus yards in the air. He's got to throw the ball to somebody, and that somebody is McKenzie in Buffalo. Michael Thomas of the New Orleans Saints, without surprise there. I mean, he'll catch the ball if you put him anywhere. 711 yards in the air. Mecole Hardman of the Kansas City Chiefs at 701. Abdul Miller of the Green Bay Packers at 677. And Juju Smith-Schuster of Pittsburgh with 656. Turning the ball over to the defensive stat leaders, the tackles. Donald Payne of the New York Football Giants with 33. Joe Schobert of the Cleveland Browns with 32. Adrian Amos of the Chicago Bears with 30. He's tied with Reuben Foster of the Washington Redskins with 30. And then Camus Grugier-Hill of Denver with 29. These names, man, I swear. Sacks. The sack leaders is Joey Bosa of the Los Angeles Chargers with 21. Max Crosby of the Oakland Raiders with 19. Zadarius Smith of the Green Bay Packers with 12. Aaron Donald of the Los Angeles Rams with 11. And Nick Bosa of the San Francisco 49ers finishing the top five in that category with 9 sacks on the year. Who's got the most interceptions on defense? That's Avonte Maddox of the Philadelphia Eagles with 8. He's tied with Justin Simmons of the Denver Broncos, who also has 8. And then you have Terrell Edmonds of Pittsburgh with 5, Jair Alexander of Green Bay with 5, and Darnell Savage of Green Bay also with 5. Note to self, do not throw the ball when playing Green Bay. Moving on next, we're going to talk about the rookies. What rookies are getting it done since the draft in this league so far? We'll talk about that next, Apex Madden League. All right, Apex Madden League. Next, we're going to talk about the rookies. What young talent in the Apex Madden League is getting it done. And we're going to start with the offensive side of the ball, of course, and then we'll talk about defense. And leading the way so far in passing yards is Rich Watt of the Los Angeles Chargers. I made fun a little earlier ago, but this kid is a rookie, and he's among the top 5 in the Apex Madden League right now. He's the top rookie quarterback right now, and he's got 1,937 yards passing. Behind him is Kendall Gordon of the Cleveland Browns with 1,652 yards. This kid could finally be the promise that Cleveland needs to get them to the promised land. You remember that name, Kendall Gordon. Mark Beckett of the Green Bay Packers, he's got 1,239 yards on the year for himself. Tim Walters of the New Orleans Saints has 1,171 yards as well. And Caleb George of the New England Patriots, which is a new name in New England. We've been hearing Tom Brady's name for the last 15 plus years, and as a Jets fan, I'm kind of glad to hear it. Caleb George of the New England Patriots with 633 yards on the year as a rookie. He rounds out the top 5. Rushing yards for the rookies, that's Jay JT McMullen of the New York Football Jets. Everyone knew it. This guy was the guy to get as the halfback in the draft, and the Jets stole him. And he's got 546 yards on the ground. He's blowing everybody out, but it's understandable. These are rookies that are trying to make their way onto a roster. Most of them probably are getting some pickup time here and there. So behind him is Cornell Armstrong of the Philadelphia Eagles. He's got 170 yards. Amir Arnold of the Houston Texans, he's got 82 yards on the year. Kendall Craig of Minnesota Vikings has 34, and Bradley Marsh of the Cleveland Browns has 23 yards on the ground. Most receiving yards for rookies in the Apex Madden League, and blowing everyone out of the water in this category because he's just one of their better receivers right now in Green Bay, and that's Abdul Miller. Lincoln McBarth with the Philadelphia Eagles has 365 yards behind Miller's 677. That's a huge gap, almost 300-plus yards. Jeffrey Fasaro of the Green Bay Packers, another rookie with 295 on the year. Victor Hayes of the Pittsburgh Steelers with 199. And behind him is Richard Redrick of the Pittsburgh Steelers with 126 yards. That's three wide receivers, two of them in which are rookies that are in the top five in these type of categories when receiving yards, counting, of course, Juju Smith-Schuster again as well for the Steelers. So moving the ball over to defense, who is the most tackles out of the rookies this year? And that's William Richmond of the Indianapolis Colts with 25. With one below him is Jalen Rosemond of the Denver Broncos with 24. Antoine Fitzpatrick of the New York Football Giants with 23. Rayshawn Nixon of the Buffalo Bills with 20. Malik McMichael of the Jacksonville Jaguars with 15. The most rookie sacks, that goes to Terrence Fells of the Miami Dolphins with 5. Johnny Newkirk of the New England Patriots with 3. He's tied with Charles Weeks of Pittsburgh and Brandon Holloman of the Jacksonville Jaguars also with 3. And finishing the top 5 in that category of sacks is Martavius Reed of the Pittsburgh Steelers with 2. Finishing up the rookie stats is the interception leaders, and that's Rayshawn Mixon of the Buffalo Bills, who has 3. So this guy also has 20 tackles as a rookie, and he also has 3 interceptions right now. Myron Rivers of the Carolina Panthers with 2. Willis Newhouse of the Cincinnati Bengals with 2. Malik McMichael again on the list, Jacksonville Jaguars with 2. And Johnny Newkirk of the New England Patriots also with 2. That finishes up the categories for the rookie stat leaders. We'll see how these guys make out in their career as they move along. Next up, we're going to talk about the league standings and where everybody sits in each division and conference. That's up next. Thank you, everyone, for who's listening and who's still here for episode 5. We're going to talk about the Apex League standings right now, and starting with the AFC East. The Buffalo Bills are 5-2 right now. They're leading the AFC East, and they have a whopping 34 points scored. I believe they're one of the top teams with the most points scored right now in the Apex Madden League. Behind them is the Patriots at 4-2. Then you have the Dolphins, who are 2-5, and the Jets at 1-6. In the AFC West, you have the Chiefs leading the way at 5-1, the Chargers at 5-2, the Broncos also at 5-2, and the Raiders at 3-4. Now, this is a division that could still be won by any team, in my opinion, based on the schedules and how things could turn out. You just never know. The Raiders need to do a little bit better job of scoring more points, but they've also only given up 19 points, which is probably one of the least amount of points in the league right now. Moving on to the AFC North, the Steelers are 5-2, the Browns are 4-3, the Ravens are 3-4, and the Bengals are 0-8. AFC South, the Titans are 5-1. I think they just picked up their first loss. I think it was last week. I'm not sure. It could be misquoted. The Colts are 3-4. The Jags are 3-4, and the Texans are 0-7. Now moving the ball over to the AFC side in the the NFC side in the standings. The NFC East. The Redskins are still undefeated at 7-0. The Eagles are also 7-0. And the Giants are 3-4, and the Cowboys are 2-4. That'll be some matchup when the Redskins meet the Eagles there. Both teams, if they could stay undefeated, would be a good matchup. NFC West, you have the Rams at 7-0. The Cardinals at 3-4, the 49ers at 1-5, and the Seahawks at 0-6. NFC North, the Packers are 6-1, the Vikings are 5-1, the Bears are 4-3, and the Lions are 2-4. Tight race there in the NFC North as well. And finishing up the Apex standings right now is the NFC South, where the Buccaneers are 4-2, the Panthers are 2-4, the Falcons are 1-5, and the Saints are 0-7. A lot could still unfold halfway through the season. You still have another half of games to play. Some teams still have their bye weeks and such. Anything is possible. Some have stronger schedules than others, and that's what makes it fun. You know, looking at these matchups as they come up, what matchups will possibly be a determining factor for someone's playoff. And, you know, we'll look into that as we keep going on more and more into the end of the season and get closer to playoff time. But that takes care of the league standings right now for the Apex Madden League. And next we're going to talk about the power rankings based on where these standings are, based on where these teams have played, who they still have to play. We'll get into that next with the Apex Power Rankings. All right, Apex, now let's talk about the Apex Power Rankings. And I already know that this is going to be a topic in the chat as soon as people start to hear the podcast. And I don't know if I wanted to start at the top or start at the bottom and work my way back to this. So I'm just going to get it out of the way now. Here is the top 10 Apex Power Rankings right now as we sit in the Week 8 Cup right now in the season. The Washington Redskins at number 1 at 7-0. The Kansas City Chiefs at number 2 at 5-1. The Rams at number 3, 7-0. The Eagles at number 4, 7-0. At number 5, the Packers at 6-1. Minnesota's 6th with 5-1. Tennessee Titans in 7th at 5-1. The Chargers, who are 5-2, sit 8th. The Denver Broncos, 5-2, sit 9th. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are 5-2, sit 10th. So there's the top 10. Starting from the first spot, you have the Redskins, Chiefs, Rams, Eagles, Packers, Vikings, Titans, Chargers, Broncos, Steelers. Next, you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in at 11 at 4-2. They're tied with New England, who are also 4-2. They're 12th on the power rankings. The Bills are 13th at 5-2. The Browns and Bears both have a record of 4-3. The Browns are 14th. The Bears are 15th. And Jacksonville Jaguars at the 16th spot at 3-4. The Colts at the 17th spot are 3-4 as well. The Baltimore Ravens are 3-4. The Cardinals and the Giants also 3-4. So you have the Ravens at 18, the Cardinals at 19, and the Giants at 20. The Panthers and Cowboys both have a 2-4 record. Panthers are in the 21st spot. The Cowboys are in the 22nd spot. The Raiders are 23rd at 3-4. The Lions, the Detroit Lions, are 2-4 at the 24th spot. And in the top 25, the Miami Dolphins round that out at 2-5 with the 25th spot. Now we get into the bottom feeders, quote unquote. The Atlanta Falcons in at 26 at 1-5. The Niners at 27 at 1-5. The New York Jets at 28, they're 1-6. The New Orleans Saints at 29, they're 0-7. The Cincinnati Bengals at 30, they're 0-8. The Houston Texans at 31, they're 0-7. And the Seattle Seahawks at 32 are 0-6. So that takes care of the Apex Power Rankings right now, currently as we sit today. Next up, we'll talk a little bit about we'll recap about the show today and what we're going to talk about moving forward in the future with the outro. That's up next. All right, fellas, I hope you all enjoyed the show. If you listened all the way through, cool. If not, I get it. It's kind of boring just talking about stats and stuff, but that's what I do. Anyhow, I'm also looking to get the members involved too as well. I want to get a coach in to do an interview, talk a little bit about them. I also have the magazine that I'm going to try to do once a month as well. That's going to kind of highlight the interview in which the person I talked to, kind of give them a spotlight in the community, not just for the Apex Madden League, but for your Madden community, something that you can take with you and say, hey, you know, Apex, this dude did a feature on me, here it is, blah, blah, blah. If you're into that kind of thing, I know a lot of you play in multiple different leagues. I know a lot of you have multiple different personalities. Most of us do who do stuff like this, so that's just one keynote. The other thing, too, is if you guys are looking for any kind of custom gear, whether it be shirts or sweatshirts or hoodies or whatever it might be, I'm still looking for a supplier to do hats and stuff, but we could do that for you, customized, that good stuff, logos, graphics, things like that. Hit us up at F3 Franchise. Also, wanted to talk quickly about one note that was just recently brought up between my last podcast and this one, and that is the explanation of the X Factor and Superstar dev. Make sure you guys are on top of that and you don't get yourself caught out there with having more X Factor or Superstars than you're supposed to have. I think it's a good trait. I think it's in place. Trust the process. We're moving along, guys. We're doing great. I'm enjoying myself here doing this. So if there's anything that you guys think you might want to see or hear more of on the show, or something that you haven't heard or seen yet, if you're looking to get involved into something, hit me up, man. Hit me up in my DM. Get in touch with Alpha. He knows how to get in touch with me as well. I'm always around. So, guys, again, thank you very much for tuning in to the 5th episode of the Franchise Podcast, only for the Apex Madden League on Xbox One. And that's pretty much all I got for you guys this week, man. I'm out.